the county budget meeting. So.
Or not?
No, 3 are definitely not coming. I'm not sure about Larry Pelletier.
Never had this.
One long meeting here, but one long.
Does this mean we'll probably mention just continue this tomorrow night?
I would say only if we think we can have a full.
quorum, yeah.
If we can't get 11, there's no sense in doing so.
Then we could look to
bring back the
schedule it.
table.
We could schedule it for Monday or Tuesday if we think that's a better night.
That might be better, because I'm already missing.
I won't make next Tuesday.
How does Monday look?
Monday night of next week is bad, that's fine.
I think Monday I'm available.
I can do Monday.
I'm not, but I will be. I'll
Monday
make
this week.
myself available. Well, we have our Minot budget meetings start Monday, but I'll skip that in lieu of this, because I already know what's going on over there, so.
Tuesday, nothing for us.
Yeah, it's the 5th Monday, isn't it,
Tuesday.
coming up? Or is it the 4th?
It must be the 4th, because we meet on the first and third Tuesdays. It's gotta be the 4th.
Couldn't accomplish anything.
We tabled 6 items, or 10 items, like,
Yeah.
Paula, your availability next week is Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Because the public
Tuesday and
hearing,
Wednesday.
public hearing's Wednesday, so.
Yeah. I
is
can't
there a
come,
council meeting Tuesday, Linda?
I can't come on November 3rd
And I have a
because
school committee next week.
I'm awarded and we're doing all of the review for the voting. Train all the new people.
Linda, Monday or Tuesday next week? Good. Monday or Tuesday next week?
Tuesday only for me.
Tuesday only?
Yeah. Monday's tied up.
I can do Monday or Tuesday.
I do Monday.
Monday only?
I'll make myself, like I said, I'll make myself available to finish it.
Tuesday's easier, but I can do either one.
I can do either one. We don't know about the other.
But we have to know what the others are going to be.
Well, maybe we can give some instructions to Clarice to make some phone calls tomorrow and see what we can figure out.
I can't find it, Linda. Okay. Sorry about that.
All right. All right, we'll go ahead and call this budget committee meeting to order. Let's go ahead and stand for the pledge of allegiance.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll go around and do a roll call. Phil Kroll, City of Auburn.
Robert Reed, City of Lewiston.
Lisa Chesery, Minot.
Noel Hinckley, Sabatis.
Jane Penthony, Poland.
Lee Clement, OS, Lewiston.
Scott, Lewiston.
Alan Maselli, Lewiston.
Great. Thank you very much. Clarice, we recognize that we do not have what would consider a full majority for any changes. So before you came in, we were talking about a rescheduled date,
Okay,
because we don't believe tomorrow wouldn't do the same. We would still have not enough members.
Okay.
I've emailed those who are not here to see what their availability would be Monday,
okay.
because you would need it before the public hearing on.
Right,
Wednesday.
well, I need to be able to give it to the towns. I think it's 10 days before the public hearing, so
Right.
cuts it.
But that's separate from the,
When's
the public hearing's on the 9th.
Yeah,
Well, we,
Okay.
as long as I got, the 10 days, then.
We've got time. To do it Monday, Tuesday, we have time.
As long as you don't change too much, because I got to do all the changes too.
No guarantees. Okay.
we're just going to cut the entire sheriff's.
So we'll go ahead and review the budgets, starting, so first we have the EMA. What I would recommend for the board is ask questions, get information, but let's not make any recommendations at this time. And we'll table, we won't bring up any of these for a vote at this time. We'll wait for our next meeting. So that way none of them are tabled, we'll just bring them up at our next meeting. Yep.
I'm sorry, if we thought the budget was appropriate, could we just vote to?
Oh, we definitely could.
Okay.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
that's what
sorry.
we did. That's what we
Just the way it
did.
sounded.
Yeah, I was just gonna,
Okay.
okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Excuse me, did you vote to accept the minutes yet?
No,
I don't think so. We should probably do that.
I'll make a,
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Teresa, go on the script. If it's not on the script, I'm not doing it. So,
Whoops.
all right, I think we're ready. Yes.
Evening. My name is Angela Molino. I'm the Director of Androscoggin County Emergency Management Agency, here to present this year's budget. So I have a little narrative I'll go over for those who are new. So EMA operates under the authority of the Maine Emergency Management Agency Statute, Title 37B, Chapter 13. Our mission is to prepare communities by coordinating and integrating all activities necessary to build, sustain, improve the capability to ensure mitigation, preparation, response, and recovery from all effects of disasters, natural, tech, or adversarial. The agency partners with public safety, the private sector, nonprofit, volunteer agencies to coordinate planning, response, and recovery. The agency administers the emergency management related federal grants at the county level. One such grant is EMPG. So this allows EMA to receive 50 cents reimbursement for every budget dollar spent on total operation costs. So this includes salaries, wages, benefits, not to exceed the federal award amount, which is $152,039.18. This means the department would have to submit expenses totaling $304,078.36, so double that to receive half reimbursement. The additional grants EMA administers is the Hazardous Materials Emergency Preparedness Grant and the Homeland Security Grant Program. The agency manages approximately $760,000 in grant funds on an annual basis. These programs benefit communities by funding planning, exercise training, as well as equipment purchases to ensure effective response and recovery for any event that threatens the residents of Androscoggin County. And I'm just going to list a couple projects. So hazmat ops refreshers, that affects local fire departments. They participate. Network security improvement project, Minot. CPR device, Lucas Compression System, Poland Fire and Rescue. Active Threat Training, ASO. Mobile Data Terminals, Livermore Falls PD. Cybersecurity Vulnerability Assessment, Androscoggin County IT. That's to protect everyone's data. Security fencing, Mechanic Falls Sandy District. Portable radios, Wales Fire Department. Generator, Lisbon EMS. That's just a sampling. Here are a few activities the department has worked on this past year. The All Hazards Risk Assessment, Natural Tech and Adversarial Hazard Mitigation Workshop with attendees and presenters from local, state, and federal partners. The County Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan Update, which is a requirement. The Tech Hazard Plan Update, also a requirement. And the Comprehensive Hazard Mitigation Survey for stakeholders and citizens, and that's in development. And again, that's just a sampling of what we do. So if it's all right with you, I'll just go down through the budget. So salaries, that's covers 4 full-time staff. That's director, deputy, office manager, and GIS planner. That's at 197. So this is the same. We have 4105, 4110, 4115, 4120, and 4205. Those have all remained the same since last year. So that's basically travel, that covers travel. Let's see. Repairs, that's the same, automobile repairs. Electricity is the same. So sewerage, we looked at the previous year's expenses.
What are you going to do with the extra sewerage that got you so much?
So I actually counted that number twice. Tell anybody. So actually, they cut me appropriately.
Okay.
So that was my fault, but they cut me appropriately. Let's see. Although I did hear rates are gonna rise, but just like everything else. So telephone, 52. So that includes a fax, our telephone system, and 2 cell phones. Internet, so this is different from last year. We pulled internet out because I thought it was important to track that separately. Let's see. You'll see equipment, that was reduced to 0. Not much of note there. We can go on to 5205. So that was new this year. So we are obligated to pay 25% of the utilities of the Lewiston Fire Department. Central Station, we are underneath on the Lewiston Fire Department. And so for some reason, I'm not aware, we never paid a portion of the oil. And so I put that in, and it was reduced to 1,000. And it's a start. Office supplies remain the same. EOC training and exercise, that was reduced to 0. I requested 4,000. Clothing and uniforms are reduced to 0. I put in for I requested for a 60,000 kilowatt portable generator trailer for use during outages for municipalities. Obviously, that would be prioritized, and this would be one payment for 5 years set up, but that was reduced to 0. Motor vehicles, that actually is being taken care of with ARPA. So that was 7345. And 7375, computer software and hardware, I believe that was zeroed out, but it was moved to ARPA. And so I just want to go over. So that would bring my budget to $215,176. We estimated 4 quarters of staff benefits to be around 70,000. So that would bring the total department expenses to 285, 822, 16. 285, 822, 16. And that, again, that includes the benefits, 4 quarters of benefits for all staff. So 50% of the expenditures, so reimbursable, that would bring us to $142,911.08 in revenue. Any questions?
I have just one.
Yes.
For your benefit line, where is that being captured if it's not written here? Is it somewhere else?
So that's a county expense, not a department expense, and
That's under the employee benefits.
Okay, so it is
20,
somewhere
25.
else that we,
Yeah.
okay, perfect, thank you.
and so we submit for reimbursement for those expenses, and we receive that reimbursement from the state. Yeah. Yeah, we have 4 staff. It's not another person. There's just a, we included
Steps.
COLA and steps for the 4 individuals. We did. We had steps, and we had 4 individuals. Yeah.
Any further questions?
Since EMA moved to Central Fire Station? I think in 92,
It's 93.
early 90s. So we're not charged rent, but we pay basically our portion of utilities. Yeah, it's a pretty fair setup, I think. They let us stay there.
How have you been paying it prior to this?
Hmm.
How have you been paying those expenses prior to this? It hasn't been in here previously?
The utilities?
Yeah,
Yes, it has, every year.
okay.
Yeah.
Just not the fuel.
Just not the fuel. Yeah, we were charged one time. They charge us for 1 filling, and they don't, that's not their primary source, as I understand it. They use it for testing the boiler and things. I don't really know about furnaces. And they filled it one time, and we were charged, and we paid it. And I thought, oh, all right, well, maybe we should include that. For some reason, it wasn't. I don't know.
So my question's more for Clarice on the budget.
Sure.
The amount expended to date, is that considered 8 months of the fiscal year?
Yes, that ended August 31st, so yeah,
So-
it's 8 months.
If I prorate that 8 months over a year, I come out about almost 20,000 less than the budgeted amount. So is there something we're missing there, or is it? Because if I take that out, then you're going to end up around 165, 170. So 197 seems like a large jump. Timing, a benefit payment, or?
I mean, it's not benefits. I think it's timing. So
Are you referring to salary?
I think he's, referring to salary.
She was down a staff member.
That's right.
Out on
Yes, I was.
sick leave with no
That's what I
pay,
was looking
so.
for. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Lisa?
Make a motion to accept the commissioner's budget at 215,176.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Clarice, do we need to approve the revenue line item that matches this?
Yeah, that's what you've been doing.
Is there a motion for the revenue account number 9025 of $133,689? Thank you, Linda. Larry, second. Any questions about the revenue offset? All right, all those in favor? All right, motion carries. All right, Sheriff.
Some of you actually here. I know some of you are new to the committee, so what I figured I'd do is give a rundown of the whole sheriff's office, and then each department head for the individual departments can go into detail with the budgets with any questions you have, and I'll stay around for that as well. But for those of you who don't know, the sheriff's office has 4 divisions: patrol, communications, civil, and corrections. We have a little bit over 100 employees. The patrol division has 30. 2 that are political or appointed, 1 that is non-union, and the rest are all union. Civil division has 4 employees, all union. The jail has 57 employees, all union. And communications has, I believe, 11 employees, and they're all unionized. That's a breakdown of the staffing levels, because I know that has been brought up before. The other issue is going through the budgets, seeing as though there was a new collective bargaining agreement signed with the commissioners in the union, and being mindful of the repercussions or the expenses that went along with that. You'll find that every budget is pretty much presented with minimal adjustments other than salaries. The jail, prior to coming here, was already cut $500,000 approximately. The commissioners also moved $236,000, I think it was, out of the benefits for retiree benefits and put it in their budget. And under the new LD, the jail was also cut $250,000 approximately $1,000. So we had a lot of work to do to reach within the cap under the LD that was passed to the legislature this year. And we tried to do it being mindful of, safety, security of the facility, keeping things running, understanding we just expanded our medical contract, meeting mandates, a lot of recent mandates by the state. So as far as the patrol budget, you'll find the only capital item with any consequence is vehicle purchases. But those are only a budgeted payment. We know that if we don't keep up with our capital plan, it gets more costly with maintenance. We're having difficulty getting vehicles like every agency is. Civil, there's nothing in there other than a car payment. And I believe the limited items for dispatch that were capital were purchased using ARPA funds. Currently, as far as staffings go, we've been very fortunate there. Our patrol division's full. Our dispatch will be, within 2 weeks, we have the 1 vacancy that'll be filled. Corrections is down approximately 4 people. So we've been very fortunate in regards to maintaining our staffing levels. Out of the 30 positions in the patrol division, 4 are contracted with the town of Poland for 24-hour coverage, and 1 is an SRO with RSU 16 that covers mine at Mechanic Falls and Poland. They basically bear the burden of 100% of the expense of the cost of that. So other than that, this is Chief Deputy William Ganga. He's here to go over the patrol budget. If you have any questions with anything you saw there in review, or anything we can talk to you about.
Questions? Linda?
Sheriff, can you just tell us again how much that was total that was cut from your whole expenditure? Your whole
Well,
budget
but
this year?
we worked with Clarice understanding the impact of the budget. So every budget we and understanding last year, ARPA funds were taken to cover a lot of our capital expenses. So what they did is it brought our budget down where we had kind of leveled off in most budgets, our capital expenses. That way it was predictable and easy to budget for. So seeing it created a gap of $30,000 to $60,000, we decided this year wouldn't be the year to implement it back. So in every budget, there was pretty much no capital of any, maybe a couple of $500 items, but nothing major put in. With the jail, I would say we had to cut $350,000 to $500,000, because we did $200,000 just in the salary line. We did $100,000 to the hospitals we did like $70,000 for medications. When I say hospitals, it's hospital stays for inmates, $70,000 medication for inmates, $200,000 in salaries. That's basically, we have some vacancies. And like I explained to the commissioners, to do what we're required to do by cap, it's not rocket science. What enabled us to do it is we also worked out a deal with the federal government to hold federal detainees, which brings in revenue. So the revenue will help us deal with some of the expenses and the shortages we felt. We budgeted, I think it was $220,000 in additional revenue there. We made an agreement with the feds to take in and budget for the holding of 10 federal inmates for 6 months, and they pay at a rate of $130 a day. So we had to make a number of cuts, and it gets us with under the cap, but we also did that based on, we have 4 vacancies now, and that's kind of happened. We just brought 3 in, but last month, the city of Auburn hired 3 for their police department, which is a natural, actually we welcome when people come in the jail, get familiar with the system, and move on to law enforcement, other parts of law enforcement career. So that's like a normal transition. I think it's been a little slow lately because of people are having a hard time getting into the training, and there's not as much interest in the field, unfortunately. So,
If I may, Mr. Chair, just what is your capacity at the jail right now?
our average daily population is in the 140s. With the borders, our capacity is 160. And typically, we experience a reduction in the head count December, January, February. That's why we felt comfortable with a 6-month projection to give us the opportunity to bring in the revenue. We didn't want to go too much more than that, and we felt comfortable signing the agreement with the feds to do that, because our number has stayed fairly consistent. We had been bringing in boarders prior to help out Penobscot County at a reduced rate, because you kind of work together, but the federal government has a set rate, and we are in need of revenue, quite frankly. So, you do what you got to do to survive.
Roughly how much are you making per day on the borders?
Well, $130 a day times
And what are your expenses?
a bowl of soup, sandwich, meals. They cover all the expenses if there's medical issues. They pay us to actually transport the prisoners. And our assistant jail administrator is keeping a pretty good billing of all those things. If we have the ability to transport them to an appointment to court or something like that, they reimburse us and I can't tell you what the rates are. But it's all reimbursed. So basically, we're providing meals and the bed space, but it's not a staffing issue. It's a tray at each meal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean, I wanted to give a rundown of the agency, but he's specifically here for patrol. And I'll bring in the jail administrator when it's up to that if you have more questions regarding the jail. But
Questions regarding patrol? Sheriff, the number of 30 sworn officers currently?
Nope, it's
I'm
not
sorry,
30
total.
total. It's 30 in that budget. The patrol makes up 25. One is, the 26 would be the administrative assistant to the sheriff. 27 would be our records clerk, 28, the major, 29, 30.
And so I know that ARPA, there was a position with ARPA, I believe.
Still is, I believe.
Is that not reflected in this budget yet then?
It's in the budget, it's just not as the revenue required. We put it all in the budget, so your budget will be the same with the person next year, but the funding for it is through ARPA.
So Clarice, we'll see, that's covered under ARPA revenue somewhere?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Other questions regarding patrol?
So are we on, I'm sorry, are we on the 1074 Center Street budget? Isn't that the one we're starting with?
I did skip that.
Okay,
because,
sorry, I'm so confused.
But if you go ahead and ask what,
1075.
I forget about it because basically there's rental income that comes with the property. Clarice established an account and any expenses that come out of it, because we still run the utilities. I haven't turned on the heat yet, and it's something we probably got to talk about because we've been trying to save as much money as possible. And for sightly purposes, we are maintaining the grounds, and that's a considerable expense. But other than that, it's It's just there with the gas lights. We have lights on the timers because we've spoken to the neighbors about some of their concerns, and we're trying to be a good neighbor.
Can I ask what you need internet for?
Internet for the alarm systems.
Oh, okay,
It's got a fire alarm and a regular alarm,
okay.
whatever, regular alarm.
So salary line's up about 25%. Can you break that down a little bit into how much is the steps? How much is unfilled positions that you hope to fill?
We don't have any unfilled positions.
Okay.
So what it is when they met with the union, our pay was out of whack. And what they did is they brought up our pay scale where we're still under Lewiston, Auburn, and we're still under Lisbon, but we're competitive with Sabattis and Mechanic Falls. But they slid the scale down and increased it. So there was no cost of living done in the new, there was no COLA put onto the new steps. But in effect, what they did is they made a whole new wage scale. So the percentages were different depending on where you fell on the scale. And how they came up with the figures is they looked at where we were and what the union had asked for. And the union didn't get 100% of what they asked for, but they compared it to area departments as well as the state police. And the county commissioners offered the union, in effect, what was accepted. I can tell you that some people got 13% raises, and one guy is upset because he got a 30-cent raise, I think it was, out of this the first year. But it's just where you fell on this scale. And it increased the base pay because I think we were starting people out at 21 and change an hour, and now we're in January, our starting pay will be 24 something an hour. So you can see the substantial shift, and they had to move the whole scale down. And kind of condensed it to work for us because a lot of agencies are doing these 3-year increment things. And from my experience working with the commissioners on the budgets and being on the union, nobody likes these big jumps. So what we kind of did was spread out their steps. So it wasn't every 3 years, this big lump sum, 20% increase. It was more smaller percentages, more frequent increases.
And was there any attempt to compare it to Oxford County, Kennebec County, Franklin County?
Not that I,
Similar jobs, more similar than.
Similar jobs as Lewiston and Auburn.
Yeah.
Our patrolmen do the exact same in the rural area.
so what they did, and it was kind of look at where we were drawing people up, from. I mean, we're fortunate where, we have members of our agency that bring experience from a lot of area departments. And when you look at the struggles that everybody in the field's going through, the commissioners, I don't mind saying it, had no interest in being the #1 paying in the area. And we're, within striking distance of Lewiston, Auburn State Police, but we're still more in the rural patrol, Mechanic Falls, Sabattis, that type of area. You can expand, and I understand what you're saying. And we could look at,
It's not a criticism.
I understand.
It's just a question.
But we could look at Kennebec, and then on the flip, we could look at Cumberland.
Yeah.
So
I didn't include Cumberland.
what we did is say, what does it cost people to live here? What do we got to pay them to live here? And I think it was a fair negotiation, but a costly one.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question about your communications line item. Are you going to spend your 50,000 this year on?
So that is a final payment, and I believe Clarice, we're just waiting for Clarice to make that payment.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's due in December, so
Okay.
that's when it gets
I was
paid.
just curious why we hadn't spent it yet.
Yeah.
I like to spend money.
We have a commissioner that asked why there's money in accounts that isn't gone. It's like, we haven't received the product
Okay,
yet, but.
I'm good with that.
The question, I guess, is for Clarice, and I asked this question last year as well. Why are we seeing it, why are we detailing the revenue account for certain contract services, but not for like the town of Poland, RSU 16? It's no longer showing in a revenue line item.
So
Those
it's
are-
a separate budget.
Yeah, those are considered special revenues. So the revenue that comes in for those is only spent for the expenses for those. So they're not covered by taxpayer money, they're not covered under the general fund.
So, but yet you put in
They're a
the
grant type.
jail revenue.
Because that's general operations of the whole jail.
Were you ever involved when we had the MDA contract? What they did is, a couple years back, it was recommended that that was the way they go. So what we did is everything included, car payment, gas, oil is done differently because they have their own gas up there. Maintenance of the vehicles, overtime, holidays, cell phone, mobile terminals is all in the budget for the 4 individuals.
So when you say the 30 personnel, though, when you talk about your department, Poland is included in that,
30, Poland is included in, but
but
like
they're
I
not
explained.
included in your expense
Correct,
line item.
right.
So if we were to take a look at that number, which I tend to do, is try to back out and say, okay, how much is that amount per
Broken down
person
right
in
down
there?
to
We're
the-
not seeing the right numbers there.
You're not seeing the numbers of the cost of Poland because it's money in, money out, just like the MDA contract was. But there is a budget
Tab
that was provided
is revenue.
to them.
No, they only get the general fund.
Okay.
I know it.
Basically, what we have is we have the Poland contract and the budget, and it's got like right down to each deputy and the difference in salaries. And that's what they're charged, medical insurance. There's overtime.
And they're not included in the patrol
Right.
budget.
They're not, the math of that is not in the patrol budget.
Zero training dollars are in here for Poland deputy.
They
The
cover-
academy costs would not be in here if you were sending someone to the
If you're sending
academy.
somebody to the academy.
That's all gonna go to them as a separate cost. All training, all uniforms.
Training, uniforms comes out of that Poland, the training would come out of the general 1075.
We haven't had to.
We haven't had to send anybody to the academy.
And it comes in we had a couple of accounts because of the vacation buyback issues, where you almost want to have an account established, although now would be a hard time to say, hey, let's put money in the bank to, for the vacation buyback, because that's an inconsistent number as well. Some people at the end of the year sell their vacation time, sometimes they don't. So for a while, we were budgeting $5,000 every year in budgets, and maybe one year $1,100, the next year nothing. So now I believe there's no money in any line to.
Can you clarify the Turner Minot coverage? Read that in the paper today.
I think there's-
We've had conversations about it in the budget meeting, but I'm just
So-
unsure what that is.
Although I don't think this is, I'll do it because I understand after what you read in the paper. As some of you may know or paid attention to, the state police wanted out of call sharing. They said the agreements didn't work for them anymore. They needed to prioritize with the highway, the interstate, and they needed to establish more coverage there. So the call sharing as it existed did not work for them, and they were doing away with all of them. Then I was provided, I'll tell you broad brush, I was provided the law saying that I was responsible for law enforcement coverage, they were only responsible for highway. There was, amicable conversations, but what we didn't understand is Troop B, which covered our area, had a call sharing agreement in Androscoggin County, but not in Oxford and not in Cumberland, so we couldn't understand why they were ending it. Then as conversations went on, they made the comment of, maybe we could establish where we'll cover Turner and Minot in a couple of towns in Oxford, so we could still have, a designated presence. Well, Oxford didn't come through with wanting to give up any territory, and what we countered with is, we know how the state police staffs, and we know how they respond to calls. It created a level of concern because of how we've been dealing with things, and they were honest about it. Basically, if they're covering an area, it doesn't mean they'll have a trooper there. It only means they'll respond to the call. So they could be responding to the call from Portland, Vesta, or someplace in York County. And if you're distorting to make it look like they're responsible for that, but yet we're showing up to the domestics to keep the peace till they arrive, it would have still affected our staffing. So what we said is, look, if you want to keep this, how about we rotate? You do even one town, and then the next month rotate to a different town. So that way our guys still stay familiar with the area, there's still a presence. They weren't interested in that because they wanted to link it with Oxford, but at the same time, they had the interstate thing going on. I said, well, Durham is closer to the interstate. They said, no, that doesn't work for us either. Plus it abuts Cumberland County. They were trying to reestablish a presence in Oxford County because I guess some of the troopers in Troop B, even though there was no agreements, still patrolled in. So what we ended up with was a resource sharing agreement. And basically it says, if we get calls, we'll answer them. If you get calls, you'll answer them. If you need help, you'll ask for it. If we need help, we'll ask for it. And if we're closer to something that we hear over the radio, we'll grab it. If you're closer to something on the radio, let us know. That's how it goes.
What's the tipping point for some of these communities that are seeing substantial amount of growth, which is requiring you to hire additional personnel But yet they're not contracting any services for that growth.
Well, see, and when I went to the town of Green, that was the issue. They thought, now this call sharing thing was 2019, implemented 2020. The state police is going to their full tilt, how they're aligning things in January. So we had already adjusted by applying for a grant. We got a grant during the Trump administration, the Cops Fast grant. But the town of Green thought this was something that was taking place right now for some reason. So when I went there to talk to them, I was like, no, this already occurred. We've already absorbed the costs. But I also made it clear to them that as far as to the county, I can't justify asking for more patrolmen, because the expense is borne on certain areas. And unfortunately, right now, I think some areas are using a disproportionate amount of the resources we have available. But I can't, I could clearly go to a community and say, you should be contracting, or if they said, should we? Yeah, you should. But I can't go to the commissioner and say, I need more people, because I know, as you're saying, where majority of our time is being spent. So for your instance, you're saying, well, Lewiston Auburn is subsidizing, or so is Sabattis, and so is, Poland. But at the same time, limited resources we do have, we, guaranteed to have 3 on a shift, is used at a disproportionate rate for certain communities. We have had interest from members of of a certain community with contracting for services, and they've even asked us for contracts. So we said, listen, get your elected representatives or your town manager to request a contract, because we don't want to just start throwing these around. That's how problems start. And somebody with official capacity from the town will provide them with a contract for the cost of service. Solicit them to bring it to town meeting for a vote, much like Poland does. That's pretty much all we've done. So that got brought up. Now, I think if we needed additional line staff, it would be appropriate to have some communities contract. There's some back office stuff that we struggle with. You know what's required in the field nowadays, probably more than most here. So when you look at like a records clerk, we could probably use an additional records clerk. In this building, we don't have space for a records clerk, so that's okay. But it is in our intention to go and ask for more staff, because we realize where the cost at this point should be borne.
So from when you came in office till now, what's the increase in staffing? Sworn
Well,
personnel.
counting the contract, counting the contracts that we have, because Poland doubled plus an SRO.
So separate from the contracts.
We've added 1 detective, separate from the contracts. There was. Well, we eliminated an administrative position, so that's neutral. So we eliminated an administrative position, boots on the ground, but we added a detective's position. And then we added 3 patrolmen. So we had 3 on a shift, and then when the call sharing went away, with the ARPA position, the federal grant, they gave us 4.
Other questions? On to,
I forgot to mention civil is next. In civil, we have been working for a number of years to increase the fees, because the state gets to decide how much you bill them. That's a true story. And the fees hadn't been adjusted since, what was it, the 80s?
Yeah, we made one adjustment in like 2016.
Well, there were certain things we could adjust as far as the civil service fees, but most were regulated by the state. And you had counties that were all charging different rates, but some have different things to deal with, like distance. Serving a paper in Aroostook County or in Cumberland County is different than serving a paper in Androscoggin County, because Cumberland County has islands and stuff. So through the Sheriff's Association, we decided that there should be a rate system. And from our perspective, we were way under market. But the state was only allowing us to charge $4 for some papers, $8 for some papers. And there's a new fee structure that went in, so we did increase the expectation for revenue. But more importantly, we probably haven't met the revenue in a number of years because of COVID. So there was a little bit of an increase in the revenue in the civil budget. Other than that, it's just the salaries in there. I can give you a rundown, like a service before was at a $21 an hour rate. Now the state allows us to charge $40. Writ of possession, $25, now $40. Diligent search, $15, now $40. Don't ask me what any of these things are, because I've never been a civil deputy in my life, but these are the adjustments. So if you see that, that's considerable increases, which we're hoping will bring in revenue and allow us to meet what we've always projected, which was, I think, $225,000. The other thing we looked at before proposing the increase in revenue was where are we with services? And our numbers, we were at about 6,000 last I checked. So the numbers are coming back to more regular with services. And services are generally beyond evictions, it could be foreclosures, people credit issues, divorce is a common one, if people are still getting married. But anything a lawyer would serve papers for generally will go through us. So. And like I said, it's a staff of 4.
Your papers, types of papers, that's a fee that's set for the paper. You charge mileage?
Yeah, we charge the federal rate for mileage.
And all expenses are charged on top of that?
We charge travel, that's the 44 cents a mile, postage, $2, cell phone, $1. There's some standard fees like that. It seems kind of handy. The county charges $1 for a fee for something.
State fees, do you refer to service state papers that they demand a cut rate, if you will, on some of the things at DHS and
Well, and I think, because they had to, this took us like 2 or 3 years to get done, but they had to put a fiscal note to it, because it was gonna cost them money. So it had passed twice, during 2 legislative sessions. The governor one time did whatever the governor did to say, no, that ain't gonna happen. But then it came back, and I'm not real a big fan of the whole legislative process, so, just vetoed it, I guess. Then it came back this last time, and everything went through with the fiscal note, and we were able to raise our rates.
pretty much cover expenditures and so.
Well, no, but we're hoping with the traditional services coming back, with society going back to, pre-COVID numbers, along with the revenue increases, some of them are quite substantial. We're hoping that it gets back to not a for-profit, but as close to balancing in. We're a government agency, and I know you should run government like a business, but in large, you're providing a service, and some of these services rely in it being done timely. So when I look at the area we cover and the numbers that are coming in, having 3 servers, when you account for people being off on vacation, sick time, things like that, that seems to work for us. So hopefully we get it as close to possible as a break even, but I don't think it'll ever be a for-profit venture.
I wouldn't close to a wash, that's much better than
That would be
expenditure.
And when you look at the car purchase, when they're due for a new vehicle, we include them in the funding for the whole agency. We pretty much give them a CID car, and they ride it in the ground, or something like something with, Civil puts a lot of miles on the cars, so we give them some 30 to 50,000 miles, but it's generally rides around the block. It used to be we would buy program cars, but we found that it's financially better if we stick within our own fleets, and allows us to upgrade patrol vehicles quicker. So.
Can add to that and ask a question, how is that going to work when gas is locked in at $2.65 a gallon?
How's
Is that
what?
going to, well, it says here under your civil division that the explanation for 2023 gas is locked in at $2.65 a gallon. And you're unsure what cost will be, will that be, will you be able to cover the gas prices with that amount?
We believe, so I checked with Alan Ward when we do the budget to see the Wortham just like that.
Yeah.
And we give an estimate of what we've seen so far, what we predict it'll go up, and the best plan to stay within it.
Or are you saying you're gonna be driving more, so do you have enough money to pay for your gas?
That's what I'm thinking.
Because
If
we're
you're
back-
going
Hey,
back to
you know what?
COVID, right, and you're gonna be doing more of this, how are you gonna, I'm just thinking at $2.60 reasonable.
Well, we'll find out. But a lot of the times, which I think you'll actually run into in the jail budget, and I think I alluded to that when I was talking to the commissioners, but when this one, obviously, we got to drive the cars to serve the papers.
Right.
But you would expect that with the revenue increases, hopefully we raise the revenue to cover the expenses. Not that, and then maybe now that we're seeing things get back to normal, we can budget in the next year a more accurate reflection of what we're doing. Because you try to, people don't like it when you have cushions in your budget, so you really can't win. You know what I'm saying? But that will be how we'll handle it.
Linda, I would just add that, keep in mind that the city purchases gas without fuel tax and in bulk. So it's usually a much lower rate than we see at the pumps as individuals.
Oh, they definitely give us, that's our best value.
Okay.
If you had a concern about that, no, we're
We
coming.
do fuel up to the city of
Yeah,
Lewiston.
because I'm
and
thinking
that's-
about what I pay, but I didn't know that, so I appreciate that clarification.
So that figure that we base it on is what the city of Lewiston charges.
Got it.
So it's whatever Alan got for the
Yeah.
bid. Usually they go out in October for their bids.
Thank you.
And if you might have noticed in looking through the budgets, because I don't want to overlook anything, there was also an increase in their clothing allowances through the contract, so.
So maybe before we move on to another topic, let's clean up some of these.
Yeah,
And so if we can go back, is there a motion regarding line item 1074 regarding Center Street?
I'll make a motion to accept the budget of $34,900 for 1074.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second? Noel, thank you. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. And then a motion regarding the revenue line item account of 9602. I believe that's $60,000. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Thank you, Linda. Larry, second. Any discussions? All those in favor? Motion carries. Line item 1075, Sheriff's Office. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Paula, second. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor? Motion carries. Now there's a corresponding revenue line item of 9,300, which is the insurance reports for the Sheriff's Department at $3,500. Larry, second. Noel, any discussion? Anybody want to ask him what it is?
Crash reports. I had to ask him what it is.
It's revenue we get from crash reports off.
All right, all those in favor? Motion carries. Civil process, line item 1076.
I'll make a motion to accept it at $288,490.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second? Thank you, Jane. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Also corresponding revenue account, line item 9275. $220,000.
So moved.
Thank you, Linda. Larry, second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Line item 1077, Sheriff Department death benefit. Why don't we talk about that?
So that's a death benefit for Dave
They
Rankford.
barely make half of what we budget
Dave
now.
died on duty in 2000. So the statute is basically pushing commissioners, we increased it last year.
That's fine.
So it's like a pension for her.
Yeah, very similar. Time of his death, she and his salary, she's been getting for the months of 2007. Last year, the commissioner raised it. COLA. That's the new amount.
I'll make a motion to accept the amount of $21,665.
Sorry, did you say why it dropped?
So it increased 5 last year to
Right.
get 5 on COLA.
Okay.
And I believe there was they had agreed that it was gonna go back down to continue COLA.
Okay,
It was like a retro.
Got it.
Years they missed.
got it. All right, there's a first and second, right? Larry, thank you. Any more discussion? All those in favor? All right, motion carries. Billy. 1078, communications. Marty talk?
I don't think, there's been no changes in the communications. Like I said, the capital items that were and correct me if I'm wrong, Marty, but the capital items that were projected in there were all purchased out of the ARPA. So again, you're dealing with the wage adjustments, and there's 11 full-time, including you? 11 full-time, including Martin. And there were some lines, obviously, had to make adjustments on because of, like you heard with Angela, you're trying to put things in the right places, and obviously some fees go up. And if you've got questions about that, but I think it's important to note, like I told you in the beginning, there is nothing new. No change.
I have one question.
Lisa?
There's a new line item, the per capital reserves this year, that wasn't there last year. What's the plan? Or is that just going in reserves for later use?
I believe it was already removed.
No, it's
No,
not.
they did not remove that, and that's for saving up for that big purchase.
We have
Savings for what?
radio console.
He's going to explain it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we have radio console production or our parts available for them anymore. We were lucky enough to purchase 3 units that were taking out of service from another agency. However, as time goes on, I don't even know if I can get the firmware to upgrade that. So the plan is to, within the next few years, build a reserve, if you will, so it kind of reduces the overall impact on the taxpayers when the time comes. to
And
replace
I
this.
misspoke. I thought when we presented it to the commissioners, they had eliminated that, and I guess they didn't. But what we were looking to do is establish a capital account for the equipment because it's a considerable expense. Marty's hoping that the account builds up by the time it finally ends its life, that we might have enough cash on hand to cover the cost of the one, or never mind, there's 4 of them.
There's 4.
But one, you know, yeah, right now, yeah.
And there's no ARPA money available to use for the purchase of those now?
There is, but I think there's more pressing uses for that
Okay.
ARPA money at the given what's going on today. This is going to have to happen at some point where ARPA is kind
Going
of
away.
a big ticket item.
You try to exhaust as much as you can out of pieces of equipment like this.
The questions? I think mine would be $90,000 increase in the salary line item for 11 employees. So
Unfortunately,
where is that actually hitting? No additional staffing. This is just a COLA increase?
no.
They did, I wish I would have brought, I know I actually emailed the new contract to Auburn, because I guess you guys were going to negotiations too. But they didn't only redo the pay structure for patrol, they redid it for dispatch and they redid it for corrections. Not the same. Right now, patrol is our highest paid employees, and then dispatchers are a couple of dollars less, and then civil's like $1, corrections is like $1 less an hour. But they were created a new structure. I think the biggest adjustment or the impact is, you know how agencies are doing credit for years of service? The county did away with the 8 years and gives full credit for years of service. So, and I know in dispatch, there was at least 1 or 2, and we have most of them, quite a few are at the top of the pay scale.
More than 60% are at top scale.
So when you adjusted the scale and move things down, top pay used to be 19 years for every division, now it's 15 years. It didn't go up dramatically, but there was an increase. I couldn't guess at a percent. You could say $1 and I'd be close. But when you looked into the 6 that are at the top of the pay scale, one of those came from, 1 or 2 came from different places, so they got additional bump ups for years of service.
Clarice, I guess a question for you would be, did we actually do a wage study, or is this just people looked at what other communities were getting and maybe looked at salaries? Was there consideration for the full benefit?
It was Larry.
I wasn't involved at that time.
So do you have an actual wage study that was done?
The union might have one that they presented, but the negotiations were done before Larry left in June. They came to an agreement, I believe it was in March or April.
So often with these size, I mean, these have been considerable increases. Was there consideration about phasing these in over a couple of years to get to to these points? Because, or is this phase one and there's more to come?
There's no more to come. The out years are 3% increases. So the two out years are 3% increases. The big jump was done in the first year. The only significant increase, there's a line item that'll cost $10,000 next year in the patrol budget for on-call services for CID. 'Cause right now, they're not on call. So they agreed to delay it another year, but then there'll be a stipend, I think it's $200 a week to have somebody on call. So other than that, it'll be 3% a year. There's no increases in the uniform allowance or supervisory pay or anything beyond that as it stands right now.
Did we increase the contracted services for dispatch this year for the?
The commissioners do that. I don't know if they
The
did.
PSAP rate went.
Ours went up.
Yeah. I believe the commissioners made an adjustment because they were on these 3-year contracts.
So I looked at the number, it was $12,000. That does not align with the increase in this budget. That's much higher. So why aren't we passing these fees down to the PSAP costs? And I know you can't answer this, but Clarice, I'm going to ask that you take this back to the commissioners because that should be a matching increase. If the cost of doing dispatch communications is increasing at that rate, then our contracted services should experience that same type of increase. And to see only a $12,000 increase in that revenue line item when we have over $90,000 in just increases in salary alone, those would make considerable differences.
And part of the $12,000 increases, we brought in the last town for dispatching services. But I don't believe the commissioners have adjusted their rates yet because I think there was a question that came up where they had signed 3-year contracts with the idea of adjusting them. But the last remaining town was Leeds Fire, which is minimal because it's based on population, as you know. So now, other than Lewiston, Auburn, and Poland Fire Rescue, and Lisbon, well, Lisbon, we provide their PSAP, but not dispatch. Poland Fire, we don't provide anything. And then Lewiston, Auburn obviously is on their own. So everybody else is under the county.
Other questions?
That's something that definitely brought back. That's a significant difference.
I think it is. And so we will talk about the revenue line item soon. And so,
That doesn't include holiday pay. I mean, you've got that too. I mean, all three are vastly increased.
and just so, I
no, I
don't
understand what you're saying.
disagree with the increases. I understand the cost to run communication center, and I understand the costs that are to retain that staffing level. That's not my argument. My argument is about what are we passing on for these contracted services? Because these rates are not.
And I don't mean, you know how the structure is here, some of you may not. The dispatch rate is set by the commissioners. It's not set by me. I don't run a business, but we provide the service, and Marty works with everybody to go. But the rate, I think it's every 3 years they look at it, or it has been.
Every year now.
And at the time, we've made recommendations. I remember my first term here, we made a recommendation as far as where they go. We thought they were charging not enough for their PSAP, and where everybody pays into PSAP, including like Lisbon, we figured that would give the opportunity to recover the most money. But I don't know if the attitude of the commission, I can't speak to the attitude of what the commissioners would be, or whether they think the rate should cover the full expense, because we would still need dispatch services provided to us. So it's almost like by dispatching for everybody else, you're bringing in revenue to offset the expense. But what's required of dispatchers now, and the certifications and the training, in the numbers you have, there's a little bit of expense with staffing, because we've had to add, but we would still require 2 on. Right now, we have 3 on 16 hours a day and 2 on 8 hours a day. We have to have 2 because of the PSAP rules.
Could you tell me what PSAP stands for, please?
Public Safety Answering Point.
Thank you.
It's your 911. So that, anybody we can bring in without adding expenses, staff, helps us lower the cost to run the facility, obviously.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a comment, not a question. It's unfortunate to see these large increases I mean, it's water under the bridge. There's nothing we can do, there's nothing the commissioners can do because everything's negotiated. But I think we can make a recommendation to the commissioners that in the future, if they're seeing wage increases of, let's say, more than 5%, part of the negotiation should be ways to phase it in. So it's not hitting the taxpayer all at once, just to kind of ask them to keep that in the back of their mind. But the issue itself, it's negotiated, it's done. We cannot change that.
All right. With that statement, is there a motion to accept the line item 1078 communications? Thank you, Lee. Larry, second. Any discussions? All those in favor? All right, motion carries. Corresponding line item is 9345. Dispatch services. The
Can I just-
revenue line item of 297,291.
I just wanted to say, because I know some of you are new to this, and we'd extend the offer, whether it's your curiosity about any budget, any division, or any operation. If you want to meet with us to get more detailed explanations at any time or get a tour of the facility, we're more than happy to do that, because I know it's a lot. You know, you're looking at 10 million plus in budgets. You're looking at over 100 employees. There's a lot that factors into it. To understand more how the operation works with the facility or communications, where some of you might not be familiar, I extend the invitation at any time, or even questions more detailed about the budget where you're not wanting to waste everybody's time tonight or maybe think it's inconsequential. We can always make time to do that.
Thanks, Sheriff. Before we get a motion on the communications dispatch services line item, one thing I would throw out for discussion is currently it's a 4.46% increase in that revenue line item. I would like to see if there's any discussion on increasing that to the exact increase of the expense line item of 14.73%, which might require the commissioners to go back to contracts these agreements differently.
Have to table it though, right?
They make a change.
That's correct.
I would be in agreement with that.
Okay. So is there a motion to table this line item?
So moved.
Thanks, Jane. Larry, second. All those in favor?
Table the communications budget, is that what just happened?
Revenue.
No,
The revenue.
the revenue.
I don't get the revenue, they get it, you know, I just need the money to run the operation.
Clarice, can you provide us where they are within their contracted years? Sure. That would be helpful. So. All right, we're at line item 1050, which is jail support of prisoners.
So this is Major Jeff Shute, he's the jail administrator. I gave you a rundown of the jail probably about an hour ago, so if you need a recap, hit him up. I'm getting kind of tired. Anyway. I don't know if any of you have looked at it in great detail. Again, it's big, there's 57 employees. We have a capacity of a rated capacity of 160. Our average daily population's in the 140s. There's really,
You did a pretty thorough job.
yeah. Again, most of the capital is taken care of through ARPA. I don't even know, did we? All of the capital?
Except for prior payments.
You know, the facility has been, we're fortunate because it was built at the same times where others are having structural problems, but ours has been maintained. It has been well kept as far as new roof, you know, system. We've had problems with our heating and HVAC system, but as far as the skeleton, we're looking good. We repaved the driveway this year to meet with ADA compliance because the state had given us several warnings. So the corrections that need to be made have been made. Shouldn't cause us any problems.
Question I would have is, what impact will we see in future year? Have you started projecting how that cap that the legislators passed? And then also, what action do we know that the legislators taking to address the jail?
Well, okay, so this LD that passed was called, it was supposed to solve the funding issues for the jail. And like everything else that's gone on in the past couple of years, with mandates and with DOC involvement, there was much more to it. So the Sheriff's Association didn't support it. Out of this new LD, we lost a little bit over $200,000 in revenue that we've always gotten from the state. So it actually penalized us. And it put in a whole host of additional requirements. What it gets for you here is there is a cap. So I think this year's cap was 4%. So you can only increase your budget 4%. Well, last year the cap was 4%. We only increased our budget 3%. So I look at caps, it's an interesting, because some people look at caps, well, if you can spend up to 4%, that must be what's acceptable. So they spend up to 4%. Last year, we clearly didn't. We were at like 3% or 2 point something. But this year, we get penalized for it because we needed more than the percent, where last year, if you follow what I'm saying? So what it does do is it should stabilize, according to them, the funding. I mean, we're dealing with an interesting economic times. If you look at what the commissioners did in the contract with the union, you could call it a market adjustment. We're starting corrections officers' pay at $20 an hour. So when you multiply that times 57 people, it has an accumulative effect. But I believe, you can drive by a lot of signs that are not as stressful as an environment, that are $18, $20 an hour. So I think there was a big jump in everything you saw because of what the economy has done. I support what the commissioners have done, not trying to wash my hands of it, but when it comes particular to the jail, as far as looking out to the future, you have, at least for the next couple of years under this LD, there is a capped figure for the operating costs. When you ask us about population, it's kind of hard to determine because COVID really affected that. I mean, our numbers went way down. So we can't tell you what's the normal, other than one thing that has stayed consistent is December, January, February, our head count always goes down. I can tell you from reading things that are going on in the, with elections, there's a lot of confusion about what's going on in the jail, and I don't know what your attitude is about it, but all the low-hanging fruit, nonviolent crimes, they're not in the facility anymore. It's violent crimes or major offenses. So there's nobody to, let out on bail. I mean, and if I showed you the list of who is in jail today and say, I'll free whoever you'd like, you wouldn't find anybody to free. And that's no knock for the people on there. It's just who's being detained in the facility isn't the OUIs or the disorderly conducts that some people are making out to be. It's high felony stuff. So that's been a big turnaround with what we're holding in the facility.
Another question about other people?
I have a couple questions. The math guy here, the finance guy. You mentioned an average daily census of 140 roughly.
141, 143.
And you mentioned you get $130 from the feds?
Mm-hmm.
So you're losing money on your feds?
For 10 of them.
10 of them.
Hear me out. If you take the total expense here, divided by 365 days, divided by an average census of 140, it costs you $155 a day to jail someone. You're getting 130 from the feds.
But if we didn't have the 130 from the feds, it would cost us a lot
Understand,
more.
you'd have nothing. My question is not that. The question is, have there been any discussion with the Fed? Have you heard they're going to raise their rates, their reimbursement at all?
We originally had a different rate worked out with them, and everything got put on hold, and they actually had to remove the prisoners till something was resolved because new people were being appointed to federal positions. That started in October, so we actually had to delay, and at that time, they set their new rate at $130 a day.
It's done regionally, but the federal government doesn't regionally set once. That's
And
the
it-
rate we're going to be with.
I think we were at $110 a day before
They
that.
actually raised it $20, which is way above what other counties are charging each other to the state.
And I don't
No,
mean,
understandable. I was curious if there was a process to get a better rate.
no, other than there was things we could, like à la carte. Are you willing to do? So what we said is, we're not agreeing that we will do it. We're telling you if our staffing levels are okay, we have the time, we'll do your transport, we'll do your appointments. And then they offered us a rate that was somewhat negotiable, but they're being billed for. I can't say those are money makers, but they're definitely not cost
It
prohibitive.
helps
Yeah.
increase that 130 a little bit.
Right, and the other part of it is, when you talk about facilities, a reduced headcount for us doesn't necessarily save a lot of money. It saves money in laundry, it saves money in meals, but it's cafeteria-style meals. We don't have what some jails have, which is pods, where if you bring your headcount down, you can consolidate people in a pod and then shut a pod down and not staff it. We have zones that are floors. So whether there's 10 people in it or 30 people in it, there's an officer there, because you can't have a zone not staffed. So that's a little different to people. So our head count, when it was during COVID, was 70 something. You have people in every zone. You still had 9 people working. It's 143 on average now. You still have 9 people working.
Can I ask a follow-up to your
Please.
that question? So if we're bringing in the federal prisoners, you have pushed out in the past that or, you know, local agencies can't bring anyone in because you're at capacity.
It was never a
gonna impact
capacity,
that?
it was never a capacity issue, and I had to, that kept getting to the paper because guys on the ground thought it was a capacity issue. The issue was, we didn't have the quarantine space capacity. We have 7 holding cells. So we were bringing people in and quarantining them using 7 cells for 10 days. Then we ended up taking what used to be our old juvenile section, and we expanded our quarantine to give us another 19 beds. But the problem was we had to keep the people down there before we could send them up to the population. And then if we had an outbreak, me and you and Jeff could have been in the same cell block. I test positive, well, you got to stay because you're going to eventually test positive before we send you up. So that was what the actual issue was. It wasn't we were over capacity, it was we had no capacity in our holding area to quarantine people.
So even prior to COVID, we've
Prior to
hit-
COVID, we were, yes.
We've hit capacity
Capacity
before.
issues, yes.
So I guess my question is, if we have 10 more, how is that going to impact needing to lock up offenders within our community?
We have operated above our capacity.
160.
You're allowed, we've had as many as 180 in here. It's not very comfortable. And we've had at one time, 2 years prior to COVID, I think we had like close to 190 in here, and we were boarding out 30 at Cumberland. So there was a major change somewhere. And when Andy Robinson, the former DA, when he was still here, I talked to him once we started opening back up and once courts started functioning again. I figured all those people that were freed or released, that we would eventually have to get back. So we were going to have the consistent crime we were dealing with coming through the door, as long as these people that owed us from getting out early coming through the door. So I thought our head count was going to balloon and spike. And he thought it was going to too, but it didn't. I don't know what's happened. I can just say,
We started our ASP programs again
Yeah.
this week as well, so that's going to help keep 100 or so people out of the jail that would be there.
but again, we're not seeing a lot of what used to tie up our beds were, I don't want to say victimless offenses, but criminal trespasses and disorderlies, things of that nature. What's in the facility now is elevated crimes.
Go to jail anymore. Why, right?
They still bring them, but I think the cash bails might be more reasonable. A lot of PDs are bailing from, like Lisbon does, but I think a lot of people still bring them here because it's, quite frankly, having worked the road, it's easier to process people through the jail when you look at the fingerprint requirements and all the other things. But we've had great cooperation working with the law enforcement organizations in the area as far as dealing with issues with the jail. When we opened back up, before we opened back up, we used Lewiston, which was the largest PD, to test how it was going to affect the facility. Normal. So we let them operate normally. We did it for 2 or 3 months to see, are we going to have an outbreak? Are they going to, flood our gates? And we were told, because of how things done, they assured us that wouldn't happen. When we saw it work successfully, then we, let everybody, because basically Lewiston PD is the size of every other department combined. And actually through COVID, they were the most cooperative, even more cooperative than my own agency to deal with. So we knew that we could work with them. They understood our concerns, and if we needed to pull back, and prohibit things, it would be easy to get it under control working with them. And it gave us,
Those quarantine times, Phil, they were coming down weekly from the state, the CDC, so they would often change. And if we had an outbreak at the facility, they'd make us shut down. So you saw it just changing a lot during that time.
I know you had more.
Yeah, just overtime. Looks like there's a good chance you've already blown your budget for this year. If it was so close at the end of August, I suspect you're over it. But you didn't ask for an increase this year. Was there some spike last year in overtime? Are you hoping for better results, more employment?
we had a hospital guy, a guy that he had sickle cell.
We were hoping for a better outcome.
We're hoping for more revenue from the feds as well.
In the balance, the budget has to balance, so.
Like I said in the beginning, it's not a science. We meet a requirement. We're hoping to work more with the feds. We have brought on a lot of new employees because of resignation, so there will be some savings as far as vacation time and things like that with replacements. But I think this budget, similar to civil, will have a more accurate picture of next year. It's just currently, with the arrangement with the federal prisoners, we have opportunities to compensate where our budget might not align up with the actual expense. And this meets the cap threshold where, actually, we cut enough out of the jail so the commissioners could get general government employees 5% raises, but
Currently, right now, we're actually in the ballpark with our expenditures. We're in a fiscal year. So we're, we might be okay,
yeah, he checked that we're at 25%. so.
28%.
We might not, though, and I appreciate the concern.
No, if they're telling me earlier that, the budget reflects 8 months current.
So the jail is on July to June.
Okay.
So what you see for fiscal year 22 actuals was actually what ended in June.
For those of you
Because
that,
they're only into their budget, already into the.
Okay.
I forgot to mention, the jail is on a fiscal year budget, so we're already operating in the budget that hasn't been approved yet. So the hot tub you see in there is already bought. Just kidding, Phil.
It was the limo you put it in that had me
Right over.
concerned.
Or is he?
Tomorrow's.
Yes.
Somebody calls in sick, you have to replace them.
They're not paid a stipend. Basically, if staff is replaced, it's at a rate of time and a half. What we have done to not burden the staff so much, is we've used a lot of support staff to fill in, for like the first man out, or other staff available. We've actually left some posts vacant. So like there's some, what do you call them, non-essential employees. They're essential, don't get me wrong, but we have some non-essential positions. They're not part of the security staff that we've left vacant, because I think what we're seeing in our hiring and when people are resigning is there's lifestyle interests, and people want to do their 42 hours and they're good with that. So we've had to look for ways, not only in the jail, which is difficult because the numbers you have of employees, but in the patrol budget to try to meet the needs of the employees today. So we're not regularly ordering people in, but when people are ordered in, they're paid at a rate of time and a half. And we have a limited number, and it's more difficult for us to attract, but we've managed to get some college students in, so they're available to us on the weekends and breaks, of part-time employees. We call them reserves. They're more only used in the jail now because the requirements and training and communications is too much, and people tend not to maintain it if they're not doing regularly, but in the jail it works for us. And those part-time per diem employees are paid, I think it's $18 an hour, and there's no benefits or anything like that, but they get to pick and choose when they work. It's just hard to attract. I think we have 3 or 4 right now. 3. In the past, we used to have 10. So, and those people would get offered the shifts first. There's not people that are interested in doing it. And I think in part, it's the training requirements. It's a 5-week commitment now, where before it was 2 weeks and you could do it locally. Now it's 5 weeks and you got to go to the academy. So these people that want to do it on the side, it's a little bit more difficult for them.
I don't have a problem with it. Can't get some people. Especially or, growing up. Be a policeman, I want to be a fireman.
Won't be a fireman.
It ain't happening. Just to maintain, keep. Have to go to work. All the time, you get, that's $2 more.
Well, and another thing in particular that's affected the jail is the jail used to be like a feeder system for a lot of the law enforcement organizations. It was a chance for people to build a resume, get some experience, get a little older. But police departments, I mean, we used to get referrals. Hey, we got this guy, great applicant, needs some life's experience, so we'd hire him. And then eventually they might move on back to that organization, or they might stay. But because departments are so shorthanded, I think they're hiring people that are younger. I think we're losing people that we would get for 3 to 5 years, 2 or 3 years. So it's kind of hurt us in the jail end on a roundabout way. But I think our salary wage right now, not including stipends for education or night shift differential, I think the starting pay is like $20 in January, and then the top pay is almost $30. So when you compare it to other correctional facilities, at least when that contract was negotiated, I believe we were in the top 5 in the state. But it's not, people grow up saying, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a police officer. People kind of fall into or kick the tires on a corrections profession, and some stay and some move on. Yep, we have an FTO program, field training officer program.
It's roughly 2 weeks, but it depends on the applicant. It could be a little bit longer depending on their needs, but the minimum of 2 weeks of on-the-job training.
Well, 2 weeks because they work 12-hour shifts, and there's also an orientation period before where they work with our training supervisor, and they go to the academy for 5 weeks. Now, in the 90s, you went to training for 2 weeks, like that training is now translated to 5 weeks. So everything in every line in law enforcement is a little bit more intensive than it used to be.
The whole training process is probably 2 months, but just actual working on the jail with someone's 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I think most FTO programs, you're probably looking at an average of 700 hours, or we'll say 800 hours. So if you divide that by 40, that's, what is that? I don't even know. You know, so we're all looking at, I think, you know, with us, we estimate anywhere from 500 to 1,000 hours of, and it depends on the individual. I mean, some people go through it quicker, and obviously if you're hiring experienced officers from somewhere else, that brings the number right down to how many hours they do, you know. Yeah, no problem.
Questions, communications?
I have a couple. So you had a line item last year for boarding of prisoners that was 30,000 that wasn't expended and wasn't asked for. Can you just refresh my memory on what?
Prior to COVID, we were boarding prisoners at Cumberland. And we left it in there in case once things open back up, we had a need, because if you don't have a line for the expense, you can't expend the money.
Okay.
That's why.
And then there's an increase on the building improvement for an odd amount of 89,880. Just what is that?
It's the HVAC thing again.
Yeah, that's a contracted amount.
Okay.
And done before the APA rules, so it doesn't fall into, wasn't contracted appropriately the APA rules.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Any other questions? Is there a motion on the jail? All right. Is there a second, Jane? All right, so this is line item 1050. Any other discussions? Yeah, I will. Any other discussion? All those in favor? All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
Now we have two corresponding revenue line items. Might want to just wait 1 second. First is line item 9260, jail contractual custodial services. You want to speak to that?
That's the money
We pay them.
pay them for the.
Is it $55,000? Yeah, we pay the custodial here for custodial
That's
service.
money
Jail
we
pays
give
the
to
county fee.
So this is a inter-department transfer.
Yeah,
Okay.
we argue that we shouldn't be doing it.
Linda, you said yes? All right. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right. Motion carries. Next one would be the jail contractual IT services. I'm assuming this is the same thing?
Same thing
For
we don't agree with.
$15,000.
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Jeff, now
I can leave.
Can I leave now too?
So all the ones down
Off the
at the
hot seat.
bottom are actually the jail.
I'm sorry?
The revenue's on the bottom of that.
All right, so do you want just one
You could do,
motion on support of prisoners for a total of $2,623,248? A Promotion? Larry, is there a second? Paula, for everybody, so that we're clear, this is at the bottom of the revenue line item. It's all the jail reimbursement formula, alternative sentencing, boarding of prisoners. At total, $2,623,248. All right, all those in favor? All right, motion carries. Clarice, maybe we let them leave a little too soon, but security service for 20,000, what is that? For revenue? Line item 9375.
That is, if they say go to a school control for like a dance, that's there's actually revenue.
So like an outside detail? All right. So outside detail, we charge an administrative fee, and this is going to be the administrative fee. So is there a motion to accept that 20,000?
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, second. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, that motion carries. Folks, I'd ask you what you'd like to do. We can continue with revenues. That's next on the line item, I guess. Clarice, do you have which ones we have not approved yet?
Using fund balance. Then the county office.
Can we start with line item? Well, these are all under 9,000, but the estimated surplus. Can you just, I see that you had budgeted 300,000. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it looks like that's what the commissioners,
They approved that,
they
yeah.
approved the 300?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we prepared to go through this, or do we want to see where the other line items end up and then circle back for these revenue accounts at our next meeting?
I think it has to wait.
I was gonna say, I think we have to wait because some of it was that we tabled because of like a 5,000.
Everything peels in.
Right.
Okay. Is there a motion to table the revenue account?
So moved.
Thanks, Jane. Larry, second. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, motion carries. Clarice, reserves?
Yeah, there's not a lot to say about reserves because we don't have a lot. We do, there is a reserve tab, and some of this is used in the revenue section. So you may want to wait until you do the revenue section.
Is there a motion to table?
So moved.
Second, Larry. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, capital projects, 5-year plan?
So on the, if you, I don't know which one you're looking at, the 5-year or just the capital expenditures, but both of them,
Got a tab, it's way in the front.
everything moved to APA should be in green. We've crossed out what the commissioners took out totally. And
All right, we'll do.
I do think a lot of work in the near future, maybe for next year, needs to be done for the 5-year plan.
Clarice, do we have a total somewhere?
On the second page.
Second page, there should be a total.
But that totals the ARPA funding as well, correct?
You're right, yeah. No, I
Do we
haven't.
have one that's actually going to be hitting the budget?
I not on, but I can get that to you.
All right. Is there a motion to table this?
Motion.
Jane, Larry, second. All those in favor?
And I will separate that out for next one, yep.
All right, motion carries. Is there a motion to extend the tabled items from the October 5th meeting to our next meeting, as that will be scheduled to be determined?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, Larry and Lisa, second. Any discussions on that? All those in favor? Those that are here, that were probably for an item, there's still not a majority of the commissioners to move that item. So our apologies.
No, I'm sorry, but this is taking a lot of time. I'm missing a lot of time. I work a lot of hours, and I keep coming to simply ask for $14,000 that has been budgeted over 30 years that we got cut from. I would like to know how I know when this is going to happen.
So we will most likely have one final meeting, and then we'll have a public hearing that'll be scheduled for the commissioners in November. So the next meeting will be our last meeting. Either there's enough members to change a line item, or there's not. That's where we'll be at. So unfortunately, we have a couple positions that weren't filled on the county budget committee. So when we have a couple of people not here, it brings us below the 11 to make any change based on the chart, the county charter. So to answer your question of when will you know, we need to schedule that next meeting. And so we'll be putting an email out to this group to determine what date is best for next week. Right now, we're looking at either Monday or Tuesday, but Clarice will be making that public notice once it's determined.
If I could add, tabling that is in your best interest.
It is.
And I understand it's frustrating, and it's a lot of time. I've been there, been in that hot seat, but we didn't feel we had enough information for why there was a cut on many of these. So tabling it is our best way to get answers from the county commissioners, and then to make a recommendation on where we feel it needs to go.
Completely understand the process is.
So we appreciate your patience, but understand your frustration.
So.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that concern too. So for the budget committee, Clarice, the tentative date that you had for tomorrow, there was not going to be a quorum,
Okay.
as I polled individuals before you came in. So currently, I do have the responses from everyone here on whether or not Monday or Tuesday evening will work for them. We haven't heard from you if you're available for Monday or Tuesday.
I am.
And then I've emailed the 4 that are not here to determine whether or not they are available, either Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
Right now, we have an equal amount sitting around the room of who won't be here, which means that we need to at least bring 3 additional people in to offset either the one that can't be here Monday or the one that can't be here on Tuesday. So.
Yep.
Any questions about all that, folks?
Or we contract the sheriff's department to collect them and bring them in.
There we go.
Possibly.
Been done before.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Thanks. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Have a great night. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you.
Thanks.